Beast Among the Broken, a Trench Crusade, short story. The smoke and blood of battle blotted out the sun. It had been a fortnight since any of them had seen traces of sunlight or stars cutting through the wicked clouds that now hung over their heads like a sick omen. It seemed like years since they had touched anything other than mud and guts between their feet. Trudging through the fields and trenches of the land as they took their positions and heeded the call of their prophets of war. They scaled decrepit ladders and rickety makeshift outposts for line of sight to hint at any signs of movement the enemy may have given during their careless rampage of hellfire and brimstone. Their feet were blistering clubs of whelps and sores. Those with enough grace to have afforded boots mattered not, as mere days rucking through the battle lines was enough to weather any mortal. Cracks of artillery and gunfire splintered the sky and shocked the very earth beneath them, as dirt and debris flew up, encrusting the eyes of those unfortunate enough to be without helm. Ears bled from infernal hymns, slithering between serrated teeth of demonic choirs, as it echoed across the battlefield. Elisha looked to the skies. The screeches of blasphemous ordnance whistled through the air overhead, cutting off his prophet's orders. Trails of smoke revealed the rough position of the artillery witches approximately 10 miles away from their entrenched line, as the stink of sulfur invaded the procession's nostrils. Pilgrims to his left and right violently shook their heads in a vain attempt to escape the smell of hell, and the cackles and howls of demons rose in the air. "It's time," the war prophet shouted, as Elisha's brothers-in-arms suddenly heaved up icons of crosses and shoved them deep into the viscera and mud that crested the top of their trench. A burst of smoke and holy incense suddenly filled the air, combating the fumes of Gehenna, and a stampede of bare feet shook the ground as the pilgrims spread apart, allowing countless prisoners bearing bombs strapped to their back and chest to take the field and redeem themselves from damnation. The target was a front line of heretical soldiers clad in rust and twisted metal. Noxious fumes leaped from the crevices of their armor, signaling an otherworldly presence underneath. Explosions of righteous fury blurred the vision of those witnessing, as fragments of body parts painted the air in blood. With the bulk of Satan's forces diminished in the area, whatever hold the heretics had over the procession gave way, as Elisha and his brothers stormed the top of the trench at the sound of holy bells. An enormous cry of prayers and curses rang out as the two opposing factions came together and clashed in glorious and infernal combat, hacking and slashing away at each other. Cracks of gunfire escaped the muzzles of countless muskets as Elisha arose from a bomb crater he had just found himself stumbling into. Wiping the amalgamation of bodily fluids and mud from his capirote helm, he propped against a charred splinter of what used to be a tree and took aim down the iron sights of his rifle. A gang of sickly warped flesh were making themselves busy feasting and ripping apart the bodies of several pilgrims that had made it past Elisha during his fall. They were too occupied to notice him and his surrounding comrades light up the scene with gunfire as the troop of heretics fell and slumped over. Ribbons of dark brown blood spurted out from the wounds where the bullets met them. Elisha heaved his rifle and sprinted onwards towards the forward lines, shoulder and shoulder with fellow pilgrims as they regrouped with their war prophet and a loose band of fellow soldiers ahead. An unearthly guttural roar pierced the battlefield, cutting through the cries of anguish and parades of gunfire as it ended in a broken demonic scream. It was loud enough to stop Elisha dead in his tracks. His heartbeat quickened, and he could hear his own blood throb in his ears as his chest felt like it would burst from within. Ahead, a shower of blood burst forth and sprayed him and his brothers' faces as the rhythmic pound of steps rumbled the ground beneath them. A metallic clang pounded the side of his head as one of his brothers dropped to the ground. He turned to only catch the decapitated torso of Ezekiel, clad to the ground, and a beastly elongated arm swiped from view. He hurried to pick himself up, only to be thrown out of the way of his position, and screams of terror and agony filled his head whilst his battle line of troops were broken around him. By the blood of the Lamb, he heard the war prophets say. As Elisha raised his head up to peer through the mud he now found himself crumpled into, the back of the prophet was torn asunder and flung apart as entrails exploded out, revealing a hulking behemoth of blood, armor, and fur, standing in the very spot where his esteemed leader had just been. Its howl was one of buzzing chains and razor, with a deep growl like something of a possessed beast. Elisha struggled to bring his hand to his face, smearing grease and blood into the holes of his helmet, in a vain attempt to make his vision clear. What he saw made him regret ever doing so, as a towering war wolf made its presence known, emanating the fires and visions of hell by being in such close proximity.
A loud cry of litanies erupted as a handful of pilgrims threw themselves at the beast, their bayonets trying to find purchase along the exposed flesh of the war wolf's armor. Like a hot knife through butter, the wolf tore with its blade-like claws, eviscerating anything that managed to close the distance between itself and the ground before them. Elisha heaved himself up to one knee. The pang of broken bones rippled up his leg, and he knew he would not walk again. "Sweet grace of God," he managed to weep out, grimacing through broken teeth. The beast darted its saw-like face upwards, swiveling its head to where Elisha had spoken the name of Yahweh. He readied himself, frantically scrambling all over his body to catch and release pins with his mud-caked fingers, as his chest plate beneath him armed tens of smaller makeshift explosives. The war wolf screeched out a deafening tone of infernal pitches, damned enough to make Elisha's ears weep blood, and pounced towards him. Spider-like arms around 10 foot in length reached the pilgrim before the beast's entirety ever did. But the ordnance was already primed, and the abomination's momentum had already heaved itself to close to the detonation. The ground beneath them cracked open as an eruption of holy fire and shrapnel met the beast's neck, then body, jerking its head to the sky as Elijah's very existence gushed out across the battlefield. The wolf split apart, its neck and chest cavity rendered wide open, revealing black splintered bones and gore. It sank upon itself in a slump of steaming putrid flesh, and the air reeked with the fumes of hell. A cry arose from roughly 100 yards away as a fresh wave of trench pilgrims witnessed the martyr's sacrifice. Their hearts pumped with zeal and fury as they had found a new courage deep from within to take to the field again and spread the Lord's damnation amongst the forces of hell.